Welcome to my build video for Neeko Jungle for 2026. Hi guys, I'm a Challenger Neeko Jungle one track, and I'm going to be taking you through my runes and build that I've been using this year so far, and hopefully you can get a better understanding of when to build what items and your flexibility in your runes and your build. So I sort of want to explain like my general thesis when it comes to playing Neeko in the jungle first. I think Neeko's like a super versatile champ. So there's like a lot of different playstyles you can do with her. But for me, I like to build full AP, full one shot, and the biggest reason why is because she just has like insane AP scalings, right? You've got 110 on your Q, and then 60, 65, and then obviously the big 120 on your ult. And then that combined with like really high base damages, I just think she's like a champ that can really use like a really high damage build very well, provided you're able to output that damage. So I think there's a lot of different ways to play her, but this is how I play her and how I find success on her. That's pretty much the way I design my build. Like I'm going to be looking through that lens, going through these items and these runes. All right, we'll start with runes first. So this is the page I run pretty much every game. So Dark Harvest, Sudden Impact, Deep Ward, Treasure Hunter, and then Cashback, Cosmic Insight, 2 Adaptive, and then the Health Scaling. Some of these I think are not super contentious. I think some of these are a little bit more contentious. So I'll go through the options you have when choosing a build. First off, Electrocute or Dark Harvest. I don't think there's any other real rune choice, but I think these are the two main ones. Electrocute does give you more upfront burst, especially early game. It will give you more damage early game. Although I think in general, the fights you're taking early game aren't like super 1v1 heavy fights that you're not like proccing it all the time. You're usually in a numbers advantage in a gank when you're fighting on Neeko early game. So having like the most damage isn't super important. And Dark Harvest gives you better scaling, but the other thing is it gives you a chance to proc it multiple times in a fight, which means in an actual team fight, Dark Harvest, as long as you can proc it more than one time, which is almost always, will give you more damage than Electrocute. In mid lane, for example, Electrocute you'll be proccing sort of off cooldown, or you'll try and look to proc it off cooldown, so it makes a lot more sense to take those more aggressive early game runes in a lane. But in jungle, I think it's totally fine to take a Dark Harvest and play for that more scaling, more teamfighty keystone. Then onto Sudden Impact. Now, I think you can either take Sudden Impact or Cheap Shot here. They both work with your abilities. Obviously, Cheap Shot works with your ult and your E, whereas Sudden Impact works with your W when you go invis. This also means that if you cast Q and then you click W afterwards and they get hit by another pop of your Q, that sudden impact damage will apply onto that. So you don't have to like optimize it super hard. It will pretty much like you'll do that damage if you're just playing the champ. You don't have to like think about it at all. Look, I think you can go either way with either cheap shot or sudden impact. I don't think it has like a huge difference in your damage output. Cheap shot is better in some games in certain situations. Sudden impact is probably better in other games when your team has less CC, because your cooldowns are more aligned with that 10 seconds of sudden impact as opposed to the 4 seconds of cheap shot. Like you can't really apply cheap shot off cooldown on Neeko, whereas you can pretty much apply a sudden impact off cooldown. So if you're just in Neeko land, like sudden impact is the way to go. But obviously, if you've got champs that are applying, slows all the time or other forms of CC, which is a lot of comps to be fair, maybe you will get more damage out of cheap shot. But I think either or is completely fine. Deep Ward, I really think on Neeko it is more important to know where the enemies are than it is if they know where you are, because you have so many tools to avoid vision or play around vision. So having that extra ward duration, especially early game, going into mid game when you're warding their jungle and their camps, it really helps for tracking the enemy jungler, which is why I like to take it. I also think this is like kind of a preference thing. But I do think Deep Ward is the best for Neeko jungles specifically. I think you get a lot of value out of having those longer wards like around their raptors or around their blue gromp area in that early mid game phase. And it means you can set up wards earlier for objectives and stuff like that, and they'll still be around when you need them. Treasure Hunter, Now, your options here are probably all three, depending on the situation, but I just take Treasure Hunter every game. I just, again, think that Neeko is an extremely well-scaling champion with money because she can buy high AP items, which works with her kit, right? You have to look at it in a way where champions that have low, low scalings usually will have high base damage, and therefore they work better with like items that do things, right? But Neeko, as well as having high base damage, also has very high scalings, which means she just works really well with raw numbers, and so that champion works better with gold. That's why ADCs work so well with gold, is because their abilities don't sort of do a whole lot, but they like use that actual raw damage off the item very, very well. Whereas stuff like tanks are less gold hungry because their abilities do a whole lot on their own, but their scalings are usually weaker, so the gold isn't as effective on them. Now, I think Neeko is very effective with gold, so I play a very gold-hungry build, and Treasure Hunter plays into that. I think, especially maybe lower elo, Ultimate Hunter will get better as you're fighting more, and having your ult up more often will definitely help. Like, there is occasionally times where I wish my ult was a 10 or 20 second lower cooldown, but I think generally, especially in high elo, fights are more centered around objectives, and the game is a little bit slower, and more slower, not slower to finish, but slower to there's fewer, more impactful fights. So it is much more important to be strong for the impactful fights than it is to always have the option to fight, I guess. People play around ultimate cooldowns a lot more. So I do think ultimately Treasure Hunter is the way to go for that one. Then coming on to the second tree, I think Cosmic Insight is just like a must. Your flash is such a huge tool on Neeko, and having it up as much as possible is super, super important. I think the biggest thing in particular that you need to think about with this is Dragon. Dragon spawns every 5 minutes, right? So let's say Dragon number 2, you have a big team fight, 15 seconds after it spawns, you win the fight, but you have to flash to get a big ult or whatever. Now you've used your flash in the Dragon fight, and that's that. Fast forward 5 minutes in the future, if you don't have Cosmic Insight, your flash is going to be on a 5-minute cooldown, which means your flash is going to come up 15 seconds after the dragon spawns, like it did, like when you use it in the last fight. Now, the situation might be different in the next fight, where you're having this team fight before dragon spawns, and your flash is going to be like 10 or 15 seconds away, and it's going to be like a really tilting fight to lose if you can't actually have that cooldown. Having like that summoner spell haste brings your flash down, so if you use it sort of slightly after the dragon spawns, you'll still have that summoner spell up for like when the next fight realistically is able to start, which is probably about 30 seconds before the dragon spawns, is like when that fight is like, that's like the earliest it's probably going to start. So having like even though it is it is a good amount of cooldown reduction on it, 18 haste on it, but that 18 haste, actually goes so much further than just the number. Like, that breakpoint is so important to get that flash up, before just before the important fight happens. So yeah, I think that one is an absolute must. I think you should always take the summoner spell if you can on Neeko, pretty much. The other rune I take in this tree, again playing into the gold hungry nature of Neeko, is cashback, and it's more money, right? Your other option is magical footwear. This is what I ran all of last season when cashback was only 6%. It was then buffed to 8% and it's really good. It's now 7.5. I think it's still pretty good. I think it's still the right answer, but you definitely can go either way. The 10 plus move speed on the boot is quite nice, but at the moment in this season, you have all that bonus move speed when you complete your pet anyway, so you're pretty fast in the jungle, which is generally where fights are actually taking place. And also, I actually think it's a little bit of a detriment sometimes if you can't buy boots early. The problem with magical footwear is it actually locks you out of buying boots for the first 10-ish minutes of the game, usually, if you get a few takedowns. And what that means is sometimes you recall and all you have is 300 gold. And I'd love to buy boots in that situation, but with this you can't. So I think, look, cashback is a slower, more scaling rune than magical footwear because it takes at least 2 items to even match the value, and basically 3 items to go over that value. But I do think it gives you that more flexible build path early game to buy boots when you need, and so you can be a bit faster around the 7, 8, 9 minutes. And then I think the rest is pretty obvious. To adaptive, there is an argument to take attack speed. I like to have more damage, but like, up to you. You live your life. And then scaling health, I think, is always correct. Obviously, there is also arguments for the flat health, giving you a little bit of a safer early game. But I think you can just, like, play a more respectable or more respectful early game if you're into a difficult matchup, and ultimately, like, the health scaling rune will outscale the flat health rune pretty quickly. Alright, that's runes. Let's go to items. Alright, so your core items, every single game, I always take the blue pet festival. I don't like to buy Proto Belt. I think that item is good on neeko. But I think if you're really good at using your passive and really good at getting into range of your ult, you can get so much value out of a higher AP build. The problem with Proto Belt or Rocket Belt is it's only giving you 70 AP and then a bunch of stats you don't really want, right? Especially if you're going like a one-shot build. Yeah, so if you want to get in range without Proto Belt, it's all about having a little bit more move speed than the enemy champion. So, first of all, you've got your movement speed in the jungle that you get from completing your quest. You also have Smite to get in range a little bit. And then also, Storm Surge does give you a little bit of move speed. As does the Blue Smite when you complete it as well. So all of those gives you a little bit of move speed, and usually that is enough that if you're sort of standing at ult range away from them, you should be able to, in most situations, catch up to them with those tools and end up in ult range. So that's why I take Blue Smite. There's no real argument to take the others, because usually on neeko you're opening up with the CC spell anyway, so the slow from Red Smite doesn't really matter, and you've got Smite anyway to slow them if you need to, which is obviously a point and click spell as well. Then you have Storm Surge, lots of good stats on it, very cheap, gives you all the things you want, i.e. AP, Magic Pen, and then move speed is really important too, because getting that move speed early so you can start snowballing the game by getting into range for your spells is very handy. You don't really need to sort of buy more of it later on, but having that early is really, really, really nice. Obviously, Dark Seal, just a broken item. You should always pick it up on almost any AP champ, just whenever you can. Generally, I'll try and buy it on my first recall. The only exception is if I have exactly enough to get an alternator, I will usually buy an alternator over like some other combination of items with a Dark Seal, because alternator is just like a crazy item, just a lot of stats and a lot of damage for 1100 gold. But like, let's say I'm on like 1300 gold or like 1250 or whatever, then I will usually buy a Wisp plus a Dark Seal, or like a book, boots, and a Dark Seal or something like that. Like, you've got all those options there. There's not like a strict rule to sort of what order to buy things in, but generally alternator number 1, Dark Seal number 2, finishing like Storm Surge components number 3, and then like just tier 1 boots number 4. But I would probably buy tier 1 boots over just like an amp tome, right? Like, if you're just sitting on an amp tome, you may as well have boots. But if you can upgrade an amp tome to a Aether Wisp, probably get the Aether Wisp over boots. Alright, then second item. Generally one of these 3 items. I used to buy Shadow Flame second all the time. I sort of transitioned a bit away from that. Death Cap is, I think, quite a strong item at the moment. There's just the stats on it are quite good. Like, it's quite a gold efficient item, actually. So the only issue is the build path, right? So generally what happens is I'll buy a rod. Like you have to buy a rod for Shadow Flame and for Death Cap, right? So you buy the rod, and then next recall, if you feel like it's a hard game and you kind of need to be strong straight away, or just like the amount you're recalling on all the time is just enough for an amp tome or whatever, like you don't want to sit on a bunch of gold, then just build the Shadow Flame. It's a bit of a cheaper item. It will give you a bit more strength like right away. That's all good, right? But if you're feeling like you're snowballing and there's sort of no objectives coming up for the next 4 or 5 minutes, and you reckon you can probably get to your Death Cap before the next objective spawns, it's a great idea to be a little bit more greedy and pick up that death cap. It's like once you've actually completed that item, your game is really, 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 really nice to play because just everything you buy is giving you so much more value, and you don't have to build like another horrible build path item for the rest of the game, pretty much. Obviously, Void Staff. I think Void Staff, you should build it pretty much third item, no matter what, before whichever one of these. So like if you build Shadow Flame first, you're probably going Void Staff like after that, and then Death Cap. If you build Death Cap first, you're probably building Void Staff and then Shadow Flame. This is because you just get to the point in the game where people have a lot of base stats. So that 40% magic penetration is just going to give you more pen than the 15 magic pen on Shadow Flame, and the AP is like not that much less. So it is just like a very, very good item. And then especially if people are buying mercs, especially the like mid laner, like the upgraded merc trades are very popular at the moment. A lot of junglers, like a lot of the bruiser champs, love mercs. And then I feel like a lot of people just play AP champs in general. So you often end up with teams with 2, 3, or even 4 AP champs. So you just kind of need it, right? This is even an option to buy second if you have like a really heavy AP team and people are just like buying null magic mantles, they're buying Negatron cloaks like right out of the gate. You can just pick this item up like really, really early if you think it's a game that fits. The only other thing to talk about here is Sorcerer Shoes. Usually I buy it probably somewhere around, like definitely after my first item and definitely before my third item. Somewhere in that range. It's sort of when you recall and that's just the amount of money you have, right? Like let's say I'm going for Death Cap and I've got one rod, like one needlessly large rod. I recall, I'm on 800 gold. I'm probably picking up boots 2 there, right? But if I have 2 rods and I'm recalling like 800 gold and I'm only 300 gold away from my Death Cap, I'm probably going to look to just like see what the game state is. Do I need to be strong in the next 1 minute? If the answer is, oh yeah, like we're fighting a dragon right now, like I'm buying my boots straight away. But if the answer is, oh, my dragon's not up for 2 minutes, Baron just spawned, and I'm not like worried about them taking it on spawn, I'll farm an extra like 3 or 4 camps to get to just finish my death cap then, right? Like I will greed out that 300 gold, so I can actually like hit my spike, right? But generally after the second item, I would say that's the most common spot where I build my upgraded boots is after I finish my second item. I think that's like that just feels about right. Like they're good. It's a good item, but it's not like a super necessary item. And I think that also is true for a lot of other champs. I think a lot of people buy boots around that time, right? So like it might be a bigger issue if everyone's buying boots super early, so then you're just sitting on these like shitty boots and you can never catch up to any champs. But if everyone else is buying the boots around after second item, then you're all like getting that extra speed at the same time. So relative to everyone else, you should be like fast enough throughout the entire game. All right, so these are definitely like the main items I'm building though. If you look at almost all of my games where I have 4 items plus boots, these will be the 4 items plus boots, and then obviously a Dark Seal. Then we get on to so the situational items. I think Zhonya's is probably the situational item I buy the most. Obviously, very strong active, especially if you're versing like a heavy AD comp or champs that like dodging one of their like critical spells means you avoid like their whole combo. So Fizz, it can be good with Vladimir. It can be good against yeah, like lots of different champs. Rengar, champs that are looking to burst you, but are like not super useful. I mean, it's really good against neeko if enemy champions buy it, right? Like you avoid the burst, and then that champ is just a sitting dock, right? So those kinds of champs you can definitely build it into. But I do think people do get baited into building this item a lot as well, because as much as it's great for avoiding enemy abilities and burst combos, it also puts you in a very vulnerable position often. Like people can set up, or the enemy champions can set up spells on you. So like you're playing into Caitlyn, she'll put a trap on you and you're just dead out of Zhonya's, right? Wei can put his root thing down, or champs can just time abilities to coincide with the end of your Zhonya's, and pretty much unless you have flash, you're going to take a lot of damage, and especially with a squishy build like this, like you really can't afford to do that. I think Zhonya's is generally better on champs that like actually have some like gameplay after their Zhonya's, have shorter cooldowns. So like, you know, Cassio, Rise, champs like that can actually like play the game after they come out of the Zhonya's. Like those are the champions that generally like Zhonya's more than like a straight up burst mage. So just like be wary of buying that item, but it often is like a 6 item, or maybe I will build it like, you know, over here earlier. Usually I'll get Deathcap Void Staff before buying any kind of defensive items, but there are some games where like you really do need it, just based on like how the fights are going. I think a good exercise is to just think about it. So like in game, you did 2 team fights, you just lost the 2 fights. Think about, okay, wait, if I had Zhonya's in that situation, would that change the outcome of this fight? Would that be something that I want? And if the answer is, oh yeah, it is, then build it, obviously. And then if you build it and it's shit, remember that, and then next time you're in a similar situation, be like, okay, wait, last time I built my Zhonya's and it just got me killed. Maybe don't build it in a future game, right? So it's a little bit of getting the reps in and learning exactly what champions it's good into and what champions it's not effective into. But as a general rule, build it into champions that are sitting ducks after they use their spells, and don't build into champions that can sort of set up on your Zhonya's or throw out spells that will really harm you when you come out of your Zhonya's. Banshees is, I guess, Zhonya's best friend, but again, you build it a little bit less, I would say, on Neeko, but there are situations where it is very good. I think a really good example is champions that have just like a spell I'll throw at you to like root you or stun you or whatever, or prevent you from getting into range as you run up, right? You're often coming in from a flank on Neeko, and maybe one of those champions notices you and throws something out. So think Janna, Morgana, Lux, champions that can throw out like a CC ability, but if you have that that Banshee's Veil, like you will stop that, and then you can still get in range and do your combo. This is especially good because if you are disguised as like a raptor or a minion or something, the veil won't actually show on your character, right? So they don't have any idea if it's up or not, or even that you have bought it, maybe, if they're not paying attention. So they likely won't look to sort of figure out a way to proc it first and then throw out their CC. They might just throw out their CC as the first thing, and then you've dodged it, and now they have nothing, like no other response. So yeah, it can be a very, very effective item into certain champs, but is definitely situational. So just like my best advice again is to think about the champions that you're playing against. Are you playing against heavy AP? Are you playing against champions that have a single spell that can really stop you, in your tracks? And if the case is yes, it's a great item to build. Next one, Lichbane. This item is an incredibly fun item to build as a 6th item. If you don't need any other defensive items, you can have so much success on this one. It makes your like 3rd auto do a ton of damage. Also, it procs off going invis, right? So you can just click W and then auto someone for like 1k damage. It's really, really, really broken. And it also just gives really, really nice stats. CDR is like, definitely doesn't hurt, but 100 AP, plenty of AP, and some move speed. It is a very, very strong item. The only issue is usually in those like late game kind of games, it is generally better to have one of these defensive items. That's really all I have to say about it, but it's a very fun item and definitely an option if you don't feel like you need a defensive item on your 6th item. This was super, super broken at the start of last season, I think, and I was building it a lot, but it's been nerfed since then, so is what it is. And then obviously Magi's, great if you're snowballing. I do think it's a little bit risky. I feel like Neeko, especially mid to late game, especially if you're the only strong person on your team, you will inevitably die in some fights, where you go in, you do like 4 or 5k damage, so it's like, you know, you obviously played really well, but you are dying and you are losing those stacks. So I do think it is like not the best item on her specifically. I think there's champions that you stay a bit more in the backline that utilize the item better, but you do like the speed on it, and obviously it gives a ton of AP for very cheap. So if you think you can stack it up, great item. Definitely look to at least stack up your Dark Seal to 10 or at the very least like 8 stacks before you buy it, though, because if you can't even get a Dark Seal to 10 or 8 stacks, like how are you going to get a Magi's to 25? Alright, then we move on to the super situational items. Morello's pretty self-explanatory. Feels like shit to build. The stats aren't what you want. You don't really want the health. The haste is nice, but it's not necessary, and the AP is very low. You just and also, I don't think Neeko is the best applicator of Grievous. Ideally, you want a champion that's going to be more involved in hitting everyone all the time in the fight. So like an ADC or a bruiser generally will do better with applying this, right? Protobelt is the other item that like you might end up building in very rare games, particularly if there's champions with abilities that you sort of need to dodge, or just champions that are very difficult to get in range of. Sometimes you just need a Protobelt. But I honestly think it is 2% of games that I buy it in. Like 1 in every 50 games, maybe 1 in every like 25, if that. Like it's very, very rare that I will buy a Protobelt. I'm pretty, like I stick to these core items pretty strongly when I play. Do often buy Zonias or Banshees. Yeah, like it's very rare that I get to these 2 items. There is one more secret item that I think is quite good on Neeko and does have a use case, and that is Abyssal Mask. I don't know if it's like this everywhere in the world, in every elo, but at least in high elo, in OCE, for some reason, everybody likes to play AP champs. And everyone locks it in, doesn't matter what's going on. So we have a lot of games where we've got 4 AP champs, and Neeko is one of those champions that doesn't do super well when they sack magic resist. There's some champions that can get away with it. Gwen, Lilia, basically champs with either max health damage in their kit or true damage in their kit, or hopefully both. Neeko is not one of those champs, so she can really suffer from teams that stack MR. So this gives your team a chance to do damage, as well as buffing your own damage, and does give you some nice stats for survivability, because in games like that, the fights are going to be longer because you're going to take longer to kill them, and therefore having some survivability is or can be helpful. Obviously, the nearby enemy champions does work quite well with Neeko because you're usually going in melee range to ult them. And then when your team follows up, hopefully they'll be doing a lot more damage, or at least 12% more damage. And you know, it can be an option. It's also a very cheap item, so you can sort of pivot to it as soon as they start buying magic resist pretty quickly. But yeah, situational. Only buy it if you have 4 magic champions on your team, but there is a use case for it. That is pretty much every single item I build in the game. It's very rare that I will buy any other item outside of the ones I've spoken about. The only other thing to speak about is getting an elixir. I do think elixirs are actually a little bit underrated by the community and by just sort of everyone. If you know a critical fight is coming up and you're not going to have anything better to spend your money on, it is actually okay to just buy an elixir then, right? Soul is coming up, Elder Fight's coming up. It doesn't matter that you're not full build. You can buy and use an elixir for that fight. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you learned something and you like to see and you want to see more of this guide educational content. It will help me out a lot. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to go over. So good luck with your games, and see you next time. Bye.